Hello and welcome to Honey Badger Radio number 73, Advocacy to Activism, where we highlight people who are creating change in the real world. Today we have Justin Trottier from the Canadian Association for Equality and Jonathan Taylor from Title 9 for All. Okay. The Canadian Association of Equality's mandate is to bring attention to underserved gender issues. They also run a men's health agency that offers mental health, parenting, and legal services for men. Title 9 for All is a clearinghouse for anything related to men and boys in education and their access. Of note are the recent lawsuits being launched by men accused of sexual misconduct on campus who have been denied due process. So we're going to be starting with Justin Trottier from the Canadian Association for Equality, finding out what his group is about, what they do, why he started it, because he has to leave essentially half an hour into the show. So Brian, why don't you take it away with the first question?
Oh yeah, sure. So Justin, first off, there are probably people who don't know a lot about CAFE, and your involvement with it. So why did you decide that CAFE was needed? What made you say this is something that I need to do?
Well, I've been involved in a number of different causes related to gender and equality and diversity for my whole adult life. I've been involved with women's rights, I've been involved with LGBT advocacy, I've been involved with environmentalism, and time and again, issues relating to men and boys would arise in those contexts, and they would never really be acknowledged as legitimate issues. The perspectives of men and boys and integrating those perspectives into discussions around gender and around diversity would really be marginalized. So the idea began to come to me, and not just to me, but to other colleagues of mine in these various different organizations that I was previously involved with, that it was time to found a separate organization that could work to legitimize and represent these marginalized issues that have to do with boys and men, and then integrate them into these larger conversations around gender and around diversity. So that was sort of the original concept for what would become the Canadian Association for Equality, or CAFE.
All right, and there are. How did you get this started? Like, how did you get the ball rolling on this on CAFE? I know that's kind of a broad question, but.
Yeah, I mean, the CAFE is a large organization and encompasses a large number of people, so everybody has their own reason for having gotten involved with the organization, including many of us who were involved in the founding of it. But for me, it was really seeing that there was this missing piece of the puzzle, as I was describing, and feeling that everybody would be better served, certainly the boys and men, but also everybody else who were affected by boys and men's issues. And so what is the most important focus for CAFE right now is operating Toronto's first men's center. It's called the Canadian Centre for Men and Families. It's been an active, vibrant men's health facility since it was founded 2 summers ago. And there we deal with a lot of untreated mental health issues, domestic abuse issues for men where they were not able to find support and programs anywhere else in the community. And by doing that, by giving them the support that was lacking, we're not only improving their lives, but we're also improving the lives of their families and the larger community. So I see our work as very much collaborative and in the spirit of improving the well-being of everybody in our society.
Mm. And
what are some of the, actually I have some questions, what are some of the challenges that you encountered trying to get CAFE off the ground and running?
Well, not everybody, how should I put this? Not everybody agrees with our mission, and not everybody believes that our mission is what I just described it as. We have some people who seem to think that everything that I've said sounds good, but actually it is just a veneer, and it masks a hidden misogynist, malicious agenda. And we are sort of just sugarcoating the concept of men's rights activism. And a lot of those critics don't really look very hard or in very much depth to find out what is it that we're about, what are our motives, what kind of programs and services and activities are we doing. So the biggest challenge, I think, has been breaking through that kind of inertia, that kind of knee-jerk, negative, reflexive reaction to the very concept of advocacy for men and boys, or services and health relating to men's and boys' issues. But I have to say, once people look a little bit deeper at what we're actually trying to do, once they find out what we're all about, we find that a lot of that negativity does pretty quickly dissipate. And we've had a lot of doors open for us from agencies that actually want to work with us. Agencies like Legal Aid Ontario, who recently just accredited our organization. So now we can actually give out legal aid certificates. That's one example. I could point to several others of a really important collaborative partnership that we've been able to foster, because once we can actually meet with an agency and explain what we're all about and show them all the good work that we're doing, we've actually found that a lot of people want to work with us, and that's a really positive development.
Why do you think there is that kind of resistance to advocacy for men?
Well, a lot of it does go to those misunderstandings about what our motives are, but I guess some of it is unfortunately more malicious than that. Some of it is based on this belief that there's kind of a zero-sum game that is operating, and that any organization that's talking about men's issues or boys' issues, or even worse, asking for some funding or some attention on social services or health services for men and boys, that will have to come from somewhere else. That will have to come by way of taking those resources away from other groups, maybe women's groups, maybe LGBT groups, whatever it is. And again, I want to reiterate, what we see that we're doing is actually collaborating with other agencies and building a stronger matrix of supports for everybody in our community, not as taking from one pool to use somewhere else, but really as all of us working together to do a better job for everybody who might need help in our communities.
If you mind, can I ask about maybe some specific instances where you've experienced pushback for your message?
Please.
Yeah, sure. Well, just that, basically.
Yeah. Oh, are you asking for examples of that?
Just to round out what you're saying in terms, and then we can get into maybe if you can actually talk about this kind of stuff.
I'm happy to, but I think the most important lesson I've learned is that there's a real difference between the response we get when we go in talking about making a positive difference in the lives of real people. So when we have meetings with the police, when we have meetings with this agency I mentioned, Legal Aid Ontario, which provides legal services to low-income individuals, when we have meetings with shelters, homeless shelters in our community, these have all universally been positive experiences where these other agencies are eager to work with us, whether it's services for male domestic abuse victims, which we're now talking to both the police and legal aid about, whether it's services around parenting. We have a program we've launched called Fathering After Separation or Divorce, which is something that just has earned some significant funding from both government as well as private foundations. So when we're talking about programs and services, we get a lot of positive response. When we go in to campuses, on the other hand, and we talk about more controversial public policy issues, or we bring potentially provocative speakers to campus, there we get a different response, even to this day. And we've noticed that depending on the environment and the context, there seem to be sort of different rules at play. So the environment where we have the most blowback would be the universities and colleges that we have provided events on campuses in Canada. And we can get into why that is. But even there, I think the response has become much more positive over the last year or so.
Actually, I would love to get into why, if and again, if I'm not asking any questions that you feel uncomfortable with answering, just tell me and I'll shuffle off and let Brian take the wheel.
Hey, look, I'm an open book. Our organization really prides itself on being transparent and accountable and very open with what we do. You can go on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/EqualityCanadaTV, and see all the videos of all the events we've ever done. Our website, equalitycanada.com, has all the documents and press releases. So I'm happy to share all of this, to answer any questions that people have. And I make it a rule to do virtually any interview request that I'm given, whether it's with somebody who's a friend or somebody who may be just kind of poking around to make trouble. I think dialogue is really what's badly lacking in this whole universe of ours, with respect to men and boys. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have. So just to be very brief, though, about the kind of trajectory that I've seen, when we got started as an organization, this was back in 2012, nearly every event we hosted was protested. And I don't mean a peaceful protest. I mean something better described as a riot, where people would attend. They would set up shop outside of the venue. They would block people from attending the event. They would prevent people from actually exiting the building by blocking the doors, which is obviously a safety hazard. They would pull the fire alarm. They would bully and intimidate and harass people, and they would just get very nasty to anybody who had the audacity to just want to hear what the speaker had to say. That's what greeted us when we set up shop in Toronto 3 to 4 years ago now. We've continued to have events on various campuses, but in particular at the University of Toronto. And we've been doing that roughly once a month for the last 4 years. Most of the last few events we've hosted have had no negative responses whatsoever. And in fact, they've been very positive events, very open conversations that we've managed to foster. So I definitely think that there is something that has changed. And why that is, I think it's a combination of things. I think our reputation has certainly increased. More people have learned about us, so they know that we have a positive agenda, not a regressive agenda. And I think, frankly, the more radical groups that have tended historically to make trouble for us, they've pretty much learned that we're not going away. And I think they've just got kind of bored. They've probably found other things to occupy their time with. So for whatever reason or combination of reasons, I think we've become more of a mainstream presence at a number of universities in Canada, and that's a very good sign.
Yeah, it is. I wonder how much this whole the fervor over Gamergate may have pulled attention off of you guys, or even the whole subject matter on college campuses. But that's I wouldn't necessarily expect you to speculate on that. So, Brian, did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
Well, I think we may have already touched on what my next question was to ask what are some of the obstacles or problems that you may have faced when you were getting Cafe started, and even now that you've been sort of maintaining it ongoing, what kind of obstacles have you faced financially, legally, and or socially? And I ask this because we run into lots of people that are also trying to start their own sort of parallel projects that want to give attention to men. So that was right. that was one of my next question.
Well, and it's getting easier to do that. So we've been involved now in a number of attempts to start groups, whether they're campus groups or chapters of the Canadian Association for Equality, CAFE, across Canada. And every time we do this, it gets easier because a precedent is set. And so we have a model and we have a roadmap that we can draw on when we want to do something similar in another city or on another campus. And it was very hard to get the group started at University of Toronto. But since that time, we now have groups at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver. We have a group at McGill University in Montreal. We have a group at University of Ottawa in Ottawa, and in several other cities and campuses. So if listeners are in various cities in Canada and they want to get involved in this area of advocacy, I think we have a pretty good thing going, and we'd be in a very good position to assist those local efforts. But getting any nonprofit or charity off the ground is always difficult. I think it's even more of a challenge because in the case of what we're trying to do, we're talking about something that is kind of a taboo and that has a lot of barriers, and not only from sort of social institutions, but also from men themselves to speak up about their own issues. So it's kind of doubly difficult. But when we got started, we had to deal with a lack of financial resources. We had to deal with a lack of capacity. When you first get off the ground, you don't have lawyers, you don't have accountants, so you don't have that kind of professional capacity. You have to eventually recruit experts in all of those areas. You don't have academic expertise. Now we do. We have a 30-person advisory board. These are people from all across the country who are subject matter experts in fatherhood, in domestic abuse. Again, didn't have that at first. So you have to build all of that. And starting an organization focused on men's issues, when we came along, there was really not a lot of precedent to that. So it's not like there was a model that had already been perfected that we could go to. We kind of had to make all this up as we went. But we've been documenting the process, and I think that's why it's a lot easier now for new groups to plug themselves into that movement and to hit the ground running.
Okay. Ooh, I'm getting an echo. Is it Justin?
Yes.
Okay. This is going to be really difficult.
Justin, can you mute yourself?
All right. So that's really great to see. You've sort of broken the ice in terms of creating groups on college campuses. Now, I know that there's a lawsuit on, I believe, around the student group at Ryerson who tried to start up a men's rights or men's issues group on Ryerson. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, there's some context there, which is interesting. The group you're referring to, the Men's Issues Awareness Society, is not the first attempt to start a group to deal with these kinds of issues at Ryerson, Ryerson being one of the 3 universities in Toronto. The first attempt was actually run by 2 young female students at Ryerson, and they were starting a group called the Ryerson Equality Association, I believe it was. But when you read their constitution, they were unapologetically looking at both women's issues and men's issues, both. And what was interesting there is that group was denied recognition. And the reason was the Ryerson Student Union said that they were not going to allow any group on campus to talk about gender issues that wasn't privileging women's voices. And what's particularly ironic was that this group was actually going to be run by 2 female students. So by definition, it would have been privileging those women's voices, but apparently it wasn't going to be saying the right politically correct things, so it still got axed. About a year after that, along came a very ambitious and very brave young student named Kevin Ariola, and he and his friends and colleagues, both male and female students, launched a second attempt, this time called the Ryerson Men's Issues Awareness Society. And once again, the student union blocked that initiative, saying that they were afraid that if they were to allow the group to operate on campus, that it would become an unsafe space for female students. Well, what we're talking about was a support group, a men's health support group, which was going to try to help with the mental health concerns of male students by providing, ironically, a very safe space for both men and women on campus to come together and to talk about suicide, to talk about growing up fatherless, to talk about anxiety, to talk about perhaps issues to do with academic life on campus, kind of important issues. And in fact, right around the time that the group was rejected, there was a series of editorials talking about the suicide rates of young university-aged Canadian male students. And there was actually an editorial that was written by one of our own advisors, Dr. Robert Whitley at McGill University in Montreal, talking about how important it was to have these campus safe spaces, these support groups for male university students. And then along comes the Ryerson Student Union and decides, we're going to reject this application. So no, there cannot be any support groups for male students at Ryerson University. So Kevin and his colleagues at Ryerson said, you know what, the Ryerson Student Union cannot prevent men and women on campus from getting together for the sake of preventing men on campus from taking their lives. There needs to be a safe space for these male students. And so they decided to launch a lawsuit against Ryerson University. And I believe that lawsuit is still ongoing and it's pending at this point. I'm not a lawyer. I can't really comment on the technical details, but it's still very much an ongoing lawsuit. Don't think it's been decided yet.
Can I just ask you a question about the pushback in this instance? So they essentially said that having a support group for men who are dealing with mental health or social pressures and having difficulty with that was a threat to women on the campus. I mean, it's astounding that they said that 2 women who started a group who wanted to talk about gender issues, and I mean, I'm going to be frank, it's about gender issues outside the aegis of feminism, and they decided that they were going to silence them because they would silence women's voices. Sounds more like it's not about the believing that they would silence feminism or not have even the right to speak, which is what's really interesting. That a lot of these individuals who oppose these initiatives seem to think that adding another voice silences them. Just like they seem to think in this instance that giving services to men somehow will cause will be dangerous to women. I just was wondering if you could speculate on how this works, how this logic makes sense. I mean, with the people who are opposing this stuff.
Well, the language they use is rather Orwellian, that's for sure. And I think, it goes to this kind of zero-sum game mentality. The idea is that if you're creating a group and you're focusing on men and boys, then that means that you're taking attention away from women and girls, where it needs to be 100% of the attention needs to be on one gender group and 0% apparently on the other. But there's another form of zero-sum mentality, and that's kind of ideological, which is if you're talking about gender through anything other than the feminist lens, then that's an attack on feminism. That the only appropriate way to discuss gender is through this one rather narrow lens. It's not that that lens isn't ever appropriate or is always problematic. It's just that it's only one lens. And the idea that all of our problems and all of our solutions can be understood and discovered through this one and only lens that leaves no room for any other ways of looking at the world. I mean, I don't believe that the Ryerson Student Union should have the authority and the power to limit the way in which we can dialogue on these important issues.
Okay, I'm just going to fill in briefly because Brian really hasn't had... Okay, so what are the most influential decisions you've made regards to cafe? I know this is a bit of a segue, but we don't really have a lot of time left, so I want to get through the rest of this.
Well, the most important decisions, I think, have been really around the people that I surround myself with, and it really is an organization that is driven by and really based in volunteers. And so, appointing to the advisory board really outstanding scholars, working to groom onto the board of directors an amazing group of 12 leaders from all across Canada. If I had to name, my most consequential decisions, it would be around the human resources of the organization. Appointing great therapists and lawyers to run the various programs that we now operate at our vibrant and thriving men's center, the Canadian Center for Men and Families. And I think the center, that decision to not only do the advocacy and the policy work and the various public events that we have become very known for, we still do all of that, but the decision to complement that with a space, a safe space where boys, men, and the women that love and care for them can come in and get legal support, can get support for abuse and trauma, can get therapy and peer support, can get fathering and parenting programs. I mean, we're doing some programs there that are really without precedent, certainly in Toronto, but I think in some cases across the country and beyond. And that has really changed the game. That has made us very much a credible, authoritative agency that is giving something back and doing something really positive in the community. And more we're getting referrals from other organizations which show that we are becoming increasingly accepted as a partner in our community. And so setting up the center, but continuing to do the advocacy work, which will have a long-term positive impact in Canada. I think that mix of different approaches that we're taking, services, advocacy, policy work, videos and multimedia, and then the events that we continue to do, which raise awareness, choosing to do all of those things and do all of them well, I think has been an important kind of operational decision that we as an organization have made.
All right, awesome. I actually wanted to ask you about your website. There's a lot of great resources here on the equalitycanada.com website. What do you think are some of the best things on here that you think people should definitely check out? I think you're probably going to get some people visiting equalitycanada.com after this show. So I'm wondering, what do you think some of the stuff that you're most sort of proud of that's on here is? Probably
the research section. When we were approved as far as I know, Canada's first boys and men's issues focused charitable organization. And that's a rigorous process to get that charitable status. We had to demonstrate that we were a scholarly, research, evidence-based organization. And true to that, we've an active research program. So if you go to equalitycanada.com, from the top menu, you'll see all the various areas we're involved in, which I was just describing. But in particular, look at the research section. You'll see literature reviews, you'll see research briefs for a whole bunch of different areas of men's issues and men's health. And then you'll see policy papers, which we have put out that are based on research. And they're policies around the consequences of fatherlessness, policies around the realities of domestic abuse and sexual abuse as they affect boys, men, and families in Canada. So that's the place that I would send people. And I would also remind listeners that we have a whole second website for all of the programs and services that we do at the Men's Center, and that website is menandfamilies.org.
All right, excellent. I clicked on it, so I'm showing it to.
Yeah, it's clicked on the research tab to show it to everybody.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
There was one. I have one other question, because it looks like you cover a great deal of different things, and there are people who also want to make additional resources, and but it looks like a lot of different stuff has been covered. Not that there's anything wrong with doing more. However, do you think there is a particular niche in men's rights or egalitarianism, whatever you want to call it, that you think could be filled that currently isn't, or at least something that could be given more attention that you think we're not giving enough attention to, for people who are perhaps, wanting to make, go to do some actual activism or build something, but they're trying to find what is needed? Is there anything that comes to mind?
To be honest, in terms of my surveying of the various priorities that MRA groups, men's rights groups have gotten into, or men's issues groups, whatever nomenclature you prefer, I think it's really giving back to the community with social services. I really think we as a movement would be better served if we could point to more programs that we were running that were making a positive, tangible difference to people. And so if you go to menandfamilies.org, if you look at the programs and services that we've set up, there's so many things that can be done, whether it's a legal clinic for low-income men, whether it's a fathering program. The program we have is called Fathering After Separation or Divorce. Believe it or not, in Toronto, and from our research really across Canada, there are no programs focused on empowering fathers for the best interest of their children following a family breakup. And we know the rates of separation and divorce are incredibly high, and yet there's lots of programs for single mothers. There's almost nothing for single fathers. So maybe that's something that excites you. Maybe just basic mental health programs to reduce this epidemic of male suicide is something that excites being the wrong word, but making a difference in that area might be something that excites you. But whatever it is, find a service that you can get into which will make a real difference in the lives of boys, men, and their families, and make that your own. And there are resources and there are tools that my organization can provide, that other organizations can provide, but you can make a real difference. And that's really what excites me, is to make a real difference in the lives of people. And so that's something I think we could all be doing a better job of.
All right, excellent. And I guess my last question, because I don't know if Allison has anything to follow up, but what advice can you give to somebody who is thinking of building something similar to what you have done?
Not to get overwhelmed by the inevitable, negativity and criticism that unfortunately always dogs this work. Not to focus on that. A lot of us spend a lot of time responding to angry tweets or responding to angry, YouTube messages. I spend virtually no time on that. I'm not saying that there isn't a place for dealing with that misinformation that's just constantly streaming in from social media and forums and online in different places, but don't let that define what you're doing. Pick something positive and try to stay positive about it, and focus on working with the people that share your desire to make a positive difference.
Okay, and I have a final question before we move on to Jonathan. Is there anything that you could, anything that our listeners could do to help you, pursue your focus in men's issues. So anything to do to help cafe or help events or what? How can they get involved, essentially?
By getting involved, and there's so many different ways to do that. And we are a volunteer-driven and led organization, so there is any number of ways that people can contribute, and we're very good at finding ways that each person can make a unique contribution, no matter where they are. Obviously, if they're in Canada, then I would encourage them to get involved with a local cafe chapter or a men's issues group at their local university or college. But even if they're not in Canada, they can get involved with our research projects. They can get involved by doing technical work, graphic design, web design, etc. There is definitely a way for you, whoever is listening to these words, to make a meaningful contribution to this cause and to the people whose lives it actually touches.
All right, and I would like to thank you for joining us, Justin. It's been great talking to you. I'll let Brian say the final words if he wants.
No, I just want to, let everybody know, go equalitycanada.com and www.menandfamilies.org to look at the work that Justin Trottier has done. I really want to thank you, Justin. You're doing really great stuff. And look them up on YouTube, and there's plenty of material out there. So that's it.
And also,
thanks.
Yeah. Do you have any final words, Justin, before you have to go?
Well, I appreciate the plugs, and let me just thank both of you and your staff and colleagues for giving me this opportunity tonight. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. It's good to have you, and keep fighting the good fight, and bringing services to the underserved, as it were.
Thank you for that.
All right. So, shall we talk to Jonathan?
Yes, of course. Jonathan, thank you for being so patient. Good.
So patient.
Yeah, no problem. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Little low. So, yeah,
Okay.
just increase a little bit.
Make it a little bit better. How about this?
Yeah, that's a lot better. Okay. All right, Brian, take it away.
Okay. Well, we're going to ask similar questions. So I have your website brought up for people to see, Title IX for All. I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you is, you used to have a website called A Voice for Male Students, but you've recently made a new space, Title IX for All. Why did you decide to do this change?
Well, some of you may be familiar with the website A Voice for Men, and I think they do really good work. Although, really, originally my website was very similar to A Voice for Men, in that it was really kind of like a blog. And over time, and really this is how a lot of men's websites start out. They kind of have a blog with opinion pieces and things like that. But over time, it just kind of evolved beyond the original concept of it. And so we began adding more and more like data warehousing elements to it. And eventually we came up with these databases, which we essentially built from scratch. And so really just kind of developed a different kind of concept and really took on a sort of different life. And so for various reasons, I think, early on I kind of struggled with, this name or that name, and I've always had a problem, I think, with naming the website. So I knew that a change was in order eventually. So one of the reasons, that's one of the reasons why I decided to name it Title IX for All. Also, some people thought that, Paul Elam may have a hand in, Title IX for All, or in a Voice for Male Students. That just wasn't the case. I mean, sometimes there was and sometimes I got some weird emails of people who thought that I ran the A Voice for Men website, which was just bizarre to me. But so nonetheless, for clarity's sake alone, that was a good reason. But another good reason was that the website really began to deal more with professionals as the audience. So really like academic professionals, legal professionals, risk management professionals. And the thing that we always come back to when it comes to men's and boys' educational equity issues is the federal law, Title IX. That is just a key reference point, that whenever you say Title IX, a light bulb flicks on in these people's heads that says, oh yeah, this, gender equity in education, federal law, it's definitely something that every professional who is concerned about gender equity issues knows, and really most people who work, especially in higher ed, know the law anyway. So there were a lot of I did a lot of testing on various names, and I could definitely go more into the theory of why I chose this name, but really those are the main reasons why.
Actually, I would be interested to hear a little bit more about the theory behind you choosing the name. I agree that seeing Title IX does create a reaction. Even when you told me, it made me think like, oh, I wonder why he went that way. Because almost like in all like articles that we do on our other show, the Polecat Cast, when the words the Title IX come up, it usually means bad news. So.
Yeah, it usually means bad news.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think I see sometimes really a misconception among even many MRAs that Title IX is in and of itself a law that needs to be repealed, and it's just a bad law. Really, I would not say that that's the case, that Title IX in general needs to be repealed, although I would say that there's certain subsections that could certainly be eliminated. But really, really, again, this is kind of going back to, really getting to the people who are working in the trenches in academia or in the legal arena. Really, that's where the audience has kind of shifted to a little bit. Although I certainly do have a lot of MRAs that still visit the site. And also another thing that was kind of controversial is that some people would disagree with me on is the gender neutral naming of the site. And I'm not going to convince everybody on this reason, but nonetheless, it is something that I think speaks to one of the strengths of what my work has become. And really, the one of the key strengths of my work is not so much being like a battering ram, hammering on, laying siege to academia, so to speak, by hammering on the outside walls. I would think that is more like along the lines of, really powerhouse media type platforms like maybe Honey Badger Radio has an incredible online presence. So does A Voice for Men. These platforms are really set up to be really kind of like an amplifier for a voice. But the strength of my work is really more in getting behind enemy lines and really kind of subverting from within. So and that's, if you go back to some of the very, very early activism work that I did when I went and interviewed Title IX coordinators face to face, and I would record what they say and put it out on the internet. That kind of goes back to just really early on what I thought was originally my strength and what has definitely become my strength is getting behind enemy lines. So now I have various administrators who are now subscribed, or not subscribed, but they're users on my database. And so they will send me cases that I haven't heard of. They'll send me information. They'll send me a lot of interesting things. And I don't know if I would have gotten that information otherwise. But no, to lay any concerns aside, or to refute them or alleviate them, the website and the platform definitely has a focus that's still on men's and boys education and equity issues. And yeah, so I hope
All
that
right.
helps.
No, that's great. Um, what are some of the problems that you've faced financially, legally, and or socially when trying to build both? I guess Title IX for All may just be an evolution, like you say, it's just an evolution of a voice for male students. But so in either case, what are some of the problems that you had like run into, if any, obstacles?
Well, in the very beginning, I ran into quite a few obstacles because I couldn't. When I was initially starting it, I was still a teacher. Really, I was still a teacher in higher ed, and when I was originally like coming up with the idea of the website, and I had a Facebook page, I had a YouTube channel, and really YouTube was where I started. But I couldn't really speak out in a professional setting. I mean, technically I could, but I knew that I didn't have any kind of support. And back when I was still a teacher, this was like 2009, all the way up to 2009 and 2010, 2011. There was just no real support, and other websites were very much in their infancy. Other platforms There wasn't even really that much legal advocacy in behalf of men and boys. There's really just been an explosion in the last 4 years. So even when I was doing original YouTube videos way back in the day, I even went so far as to modify my voice in those videos, because I knew that if I was ever caught, that would probably be the end of, or a severe diminishment of my teaching career. Now, I eventually left teaching for other reasons. I thought that I couldn't make the kind of change I was wanting to make and still remain employed in academia. I thought that something else would have to give eventually. So I started to look for work elsewhere. And that's been a very big struggle for me, because I do have a full-time job, and I do this when I come home and on weekends. So balancing, my main full-time job and then this job, which it really is, I really do see it as kind of like, a job, also a passion. But yeah, that has been a difficult part of forming it. I'm very grateful for some volunteers who have helped me and are still helping me along the way. Um, Financially, I paid for everything out of my own pocket. The first, after the website was launched, probably the first year, maybe year and a half, and then after that, for about 6 months, I was able to break even, basically on donations, and then after that, I got some donations that were actually able to help me expand and create really a higher quality website, and bring in some really high-end professional like web app development to the website. So in terms of also like socially, I could only speak about you know there were certain friends that I lost along the way that it's I don't regret taking the stand that I did, but nonetheless, it's unfortunate that such things have happened. So those are really the costs, some of the costs so far.
Yeah, that's tough. The social costs, but I guess in the long run,
And this is why you have no friends. No, I mean, this is why, like, I'm not saying that you have no friends. I'm just saying that the don't have friends. That's why.
No,
What?
I certainly do have friends. I actually have no shortage of friends, because I found that it's actually very easy to make friends. You just have to not be an asshole. To a lot of
Damn, that's what I'm doing wrong. No, I just had to make Brian say what. I'd love to do that at least once a stream. Anyway, go ahead, carry on.
Okay.
Oh,
Go ahead, Jonathan. Did you have something you
Oh,
wanted
no,
to say?
I don't think I had anything else.
Okay.
I thought I wrapped up.
All right. What are some of the most influential decisions you feel that you've made with regards to Title IX for All, as well as like maybe a Voice for Male students when you were doing that back then? Like some of the stuff that you thought was really had an impact on the growth of these websites, and had a positive effect that you're just like, wow, that's that worked out.
Well, I remember a long time ago, and this must have been about maybe a little bit longer than 2 years ago. I was in a conference call with Ed Bartlett of SAVE Services, SAVE, which stands for Stop Abusive and Violent Environments. And also on that call was the president of the Carolinas chapter of the National Coalition for Men. And back then, if you know who FACE is Families Advocating Campus Equality. They're also a lobbying and activist advocacy group, kind of like SAVE. FACE had not really formed yet, and we needed a way to take a look at these, keep track of these cases. And so it was originally decided that I would, I volunteered to start keeping track of these cases, these lawsuits that young men were filing, these young men who were kicked out of school from higher education after being accused of sexual misconduct, and after overwhelmingly being railroaded out by a procedure that either lacked due process or lacked any kind of gender neutral element to it. And so I began painstakingly going through all of these cases and trying to gather data, and it was a very grueling work at first, and I had very few people to help me. But I noticed that eventually, once I got a certain amount of cases and had been doing it for about half a year, that I started getting interviewed by reporters. And then these reporters would cite my website, and then that would bring more people to the website. And then once attorneys saw that reporters were citing my website, they thought, oh, that would be really excellent advertisement for my firm. Maybe I'll send them the lawsuits that, that I may not have sent that guy before. So then I got basically a stream of lawyers sending me new data, new lawsuits to update, and regular updates to my cases. And I got included on other mailing lists that I had no access to before. I got in on more conference calls, and that just kept on building up and building up. And I've probably been cited, hundreds of times. Uh, Really, like I would be surprised if it's not over 500 by now. I actually used to have a list of all the people who've cited me and my work, but I just gave up at one point
You couldn't
because
keep
there's
track.
so many. But I am particularly proud of being interviewed and cited by the Chronicle of Higher Education, education-based publications, being cited by education attorneys, education law journals, because whenever education publications and journals, whenever they cite me, I'm basically on enemy turf at that point. And by even bringing in the mention of my work, really I'm taking up what other people would consider to be their space, and I consider that a huge victory. And that again goes back to what I was talking about getting behind enemy lines. And another element is new attorneys. There's been a lot of attorneys who have considered taking up some kind of legal advocacy for these young men, but they really haven't had a really strong resource to look at before. And so I get these emails from attorneys who said, "Oh, I'm putting together my first case for young men, for a young man who is sued. And this database that you have constructed has just been instrumental. It's been such a huge time saver in helping me, and it's going to make me build such a stronger case for this young man." And that's just one of the many many things that you don't really see on the surface all the time. I'm certain that far more people make use of it than message me about it. So yeah, I mean, there's kind of it's one of those things where like I am certain that the impact is beyond well beyond what I can see, and what I can see and hear is substantial as well.
Right, and you said that you got this all kind of snowballed because you started getting a bunch of reporters coming in and to cover you or do interviews or whatever. How, just out of curiosity, how many of those do you think had the intention of maybe running a hit piece or trying to negatively represent what you were doing, and then they may have, because it actually created interest, and then people went to your website and found out what it was about, which is sort of, it seems to be the way that things often go. Like I think that's how we grew in some of the other places as well. Do you think that was the case?
I was very wary early on, especially when historically I've seen how other men's groups have been treated. I was very wary early on about that. And really, I got to say, I must have been lucky, because lucky or cursed, depending on how you look at it, because sometimes it's good to be attacked, I have to say, because that creates controversy, and then brings more people there, and then people who are on your side will tend to support you. It kind of galvanizes support sometimes. But I got to say, I've been pretty lucky. I know that Mother Jones interviewed me. I think it was in 2014, and there was a reporter named Molly Redding who I knew by the kinds of questions that she was asking. She was definitely trying to bait me every way that she possibly could. What she didn't know is that I recorded, recorded the conversation so I could play it back at any time, and that's what I've done a lot of the time is I've recorded the conversation. So and depending on which state it is, I may tell them or I may not. I'll have to follow the laws of the state, but yeah, that's always my recourse if they ever decide to, pull a fast one on me. But there was one reporter. I can't even remember the other reporter's name who did something that was partially fair and then partially unfair, but she was just kind of like a little, kind of like a little gadfly that didn't really create any kind of reasonable furor over my work. Right. But I think one of the benefits of having a data-driven platform, and that's really the centerpiece of the platform, is just having these huge databases, is that it's really hard to attack. It's like, what are people going to say? Like that, I'm recording. I have too many lawsuits in my database or something. Like I'm recording the data too well. It's not just my opinions that I'm putting out there. It's probably one of the most intellectually authoritative platforms in the entire men's movement. So it's very hard to take what I do and translate that into just some kind of, rantings of some unhinged, opinionated, Neanderthal on the internet. It just doesn't work. So yeah. Anyway, hope that helps.
No, that does. It's awesome. This is a question that I put forward to Justin, but I want to put it to you, and also I'm going to put it to the people that are listening as well, that maybe they have an idea. Is there a particular niche in men's rights or egalitarianism that you think could be filled, that maybe it's not getting enough attention? Some area that maybe you've looked at and said, oh, there should be. I wish there were more people doing that, or that's something I might want to do, or whatever.
Oh, let's see. I'll tell you what. I definitely have big plans that I want to execute in over the next course of the next year.
Secret plans.
And no, I won't be secret about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll come out and say it. Over the next course of the next month, and this is something that I could definitely use some volunteers on. So if you don't mind,
I'm sorry, Jonathan. Your volume is going up and down.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a bit low though. You're a bit low.
Let's get that fixed.
Hello.
Yeah. Speak a bit.
You might have a loose wire, maybe, or something.
Okay.
Because it's like your volume. I can hear.
Now?
Oh, that's great.
Okay, continue. So you said, may I shell? And yes, you can. Or I don't know if you want to use the word shell. We use the word shell.
No, I was saying shameless self promotion.
Okay, that's fine too.
Plug away.
I don't think I was saying shell. Yeah. So I want to create a new type of database. So I have databases on events, databases on lawsuits, databases on scholarships and research. What I don't have is a database of people, and although what I don't have public is a database of people. So I'm building a new database and I want to get the names and contact information of every Title IX coordinator in higher education. And after I do that, hopefully the names of every...
Whoa. We're killing if anybody's wearing... Okay, everybody who's wearing headphones, take them off. just till you preserve your ears. You're coming in and out. You're going really loud and then really soft.
Wow.
I wonder if you have, like Brian was saying, a loose wire somewhere.
I don't know. Let me check.
I mean, it sounds good now.
Yeah, it sounds good now.
Okay.
Just maybe try not to move too much, and then continue what you were saying.
Okay. So I sound good. Okay, now, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm wanting to create a database on that includes the names and contact info of every Title IX coordinator in higher education. Now, these Title IX coordinators are really the enforcers and the overarching authority on gender equity in higher education. And there are some who are a little bit sympathetic, but many are not. But to men's issues, men's and boys' education issues. But kind of the good thing about what I'm doing is, they don't have to necessarily be sympathetic to men's and boys' education issues. I don't think I'm going to change their minds by reaching out to them to care or give a damn about men and boys. But what I hopefully can do is speak to their interests in not getting sued, and and to that effect. That once I get the contact information of all of these guys, although 70% of them are women, I think that would be an excellent way to just start a nationwide campaign informing them of their legal, in a nice but firm way, of their legal responsibilities and the trend in the legal trends involving many people who are winning cases against these higher education institutions. And I think what we have to remember is that these Title IX coordinators, really, they are kind of like a risk management type of officer. They're not necessarily, the kind of empathetic people that they're often made out to be. Really, they're kind of like a CYA, protect the university, protect the institution kind of person. So so I think from that angle we can start to get some headway, and hopefully along the way we can also displace some of the voices of these other institutions that are advising them to do some very bad things. One of them being United Educators, which is a risk management firm that tells them to go out and destroy documents of administrative proceedings and things like that. I may be rambling here, but I've seen these cases where so risk management has become this insane industry in higher education, and everyone's trying to tell these Title IX coordinators to do the wrong thing. We need to tell them to do the right thing, and to do that, I think we need to get as many of their names as we can. We now have some incredible reports that we've made off of these cases, these lawsuits. There have been 51 lawsuits that have been decided in the last 3 years in the courts, although over 150 have been filed. And of those 50 that have been decided just within the last 3 years, 30 out of those 50 have had outcomes that are at least partially favorable to men and boys. And if someone is in a kind of if someone's a Title IX coordinator, they're going to want to know how that happened, why that happened, etc. So for that reason, among other reasons, I think it would be very good to really get a firm grip on exactly who is running our institutions, who is railroading our young men. And you know what? Maybe we can even make some of these guys who are doing the wrong thing, maybe we can even make an example out of one or two of them. Not necessarily in a, evil or vindictive way, but some people need to be held up as an example of the wrong way of doing things, and I think this is an excellent opportunity to do that.
All right, no, that's a great answer and very interesting stuff, especially the bit about destroying documents.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, sorry about that Windows sound. I found a solution for when your volume kind of fluctuates. I adjust the volume on my end. With my volume mixer, and the listeners don't get as much of a drastic shift. So I can accommodate if you get low, I can bump it up, and if you get loud, I can just drop it down. So, but it will make a
if I may
sound.
Okay, but if I may, if anyone listening is interested in volunteering for helping me, we already have a list of thousands of universities. All we have to do is just Google the Title IX coordinator of that university, and 9 times out of 10, if not more often than that, they'll put that information on their website. We just have to compile it and Google it and find it. So it just requires some very basic legwork and knowing how to use an internet browser. So if anyone's interested in that, hit me up. Hit me up at info@title9forall.com.
That's info@title9forall.com. Unfortunately, you just cut out just as you started to say your information.
And that's Title IX, not Title the number 9, but Title IX for all. .com.
Those be Roman numerals.
Yeah.
For those of you guys who unfortunately were educated under Common
Yeah.
Core.
I once threatened. This is how much of a classicist I was when I was in high school. I threatened my high school math teacher with doing an entire math test in Roman numerals, and I learned that she herself did not know Roman numerals that well. I actually knew them better than her, but I don't know. I thought that was, sorry to digress a little bit. I just had to throw that in.
No, that's fine.
All right. Are we good, Brian?
Well, actually, no. My last question is, what advice can you give to someone who is thinking of building something similar to what you have? I like the idea that it's a database because it's very difficult for people to argue against. It's just facts and data, and then, so there is that. But say someone else wants to do something. What are some things that they may want to think about that maybe you had not considered when you were starting it that they might want to be aware of?
Well, if you're wanting to do that, definitely make sure you're in it for the long haul. Definitely make sure that either you have substantial technical expertise or you're willing to learn or work with people who do and who can be a readily accessible resource for you. If you are, I would say to always remember that so much of activism, and really I think that, I'm very big into data, but really I see the data as really a tool to do something bigger than that, and that is to create relationships. And I think at the end of the day, activism, the main work of activism is really about creating and maintaining good relationships. So always nurture the relationships that you have. Always be willing to, don't let things die on the vine, and things will tend to work out, often in ways you may not expect. So, yeah.
All right. I got nothing else unless somebody else has a question for Jonathan.
Don't all speak up at once.
Yeah. No.
I guess Hannah and Mike are they're just doing the lurking thing.
I've been listening. It's all been very interesting. But I think Brian's asked all of the questions that I would have had to ask.
Thank you,
lurking,
Stapler.
Lurking.
I have the Stapler to thank for that.
Lurking, rawhide. Okay, I'm going now.
I do think I do want to say that at some point, although Title IX the original version of Title IX really doesn't need to be repealed because it wasn't a bad law. I do think at some point the policy that has gotten put into place without being vetted or anything, because the way it gets put into place, that needs to be repealed. I think things would be better if instead of getting automatically passed, if it's not looked at and disagreed with by Congress, I think Congress should have to look at it and sign off on it for it to, so if they don't do anything, it's like oh shoot, I just had somebody bring it up the other day. There's a type of veto where the president just lets a law sit there, a bill sit there that's been passed until it expires, and it's not, it doesn't pass then.
Okay, and if I may jump in here, looking at some of the lawsuits that both men and women file against universities, if you look at the ones that are filed and make a Title IX gender bias claim, the bigger picture I'm going to try and make with this is that really we can use Title IX to our favor, to our advantage, and really that's what we need to be doing is use Title IX, to remedy the discrimination against men and boys. So if you look at whenever female students sue their universities, the burden of proof that they have to meet in a Title IX claim is really quite low. What they have to prove is that the university was, quote unquote, deliberately indifferent to their needs, to their claims, and so forth. And if that standard is met, then the university is liable. Meanwhile, and that's all they have to do to prove discrimination, was that the university was basically insensitive to them. And that's that's pretty easy standard to meet. Meanwhile, the standards that young men have to meet is not only do they have to meet that standard, they have to meet a higher standard, which is basically saying prove the university would have not done the same thing if you were a female. And that's much harder to do when 99% of those who are accused of sex crimes are men, because these very few women are falsely accused of sexual assault because they're not accused in the first place. So meeting that standard of prove the university would not have treated a woman in this case would be very difficult. So by the legal advocacy that's growing through the courts, what will be one of the inevitable outcomes of that is that either the minimum burden of proof required for the university to be liable will have to be lowered for young men, or it will have to be raised in the case of young women. And that's something in which Title IX, the actual law Title IX, is going to play a big part, because that's going to have to be equal on both sides. So.
Yeah, that's definitely in the letter of the original law, and not see some of what's gone on that I ended up studying up on it when I was writing about the sports issues. Is that in order for policy to be changed in the education department, like they write their policy, they submit it to Congress, it sits for 45 days. If Congress doesn't do anything, it's approved. So if Congress never reads it, it never gets vetted, and it's approved. And I think there's other agencies that have that same thing going on in the United States, and I think that's why we have so much crazy policy. And I think it should be the other way around, that if it gets an amount of time, and if Congress doesn't address it in that amount of time, then it fails.
Yeah, basically. So if an incredibly unjust policy, conflicts with the golfing schedule of a sufficient amount of, politicians.
Yeah, or if an agency or department is flooding Congress with policy changes, Congress can turn around and say, we're not going to look at anything that you're doing. Send us one thing, send us something, and don't be doing this. And at the same time, it makes the elected officials more responsible for what's going on. So when they turn around and create policy or approve policy that ends up doing things like this, they're accountable to the voters for it, because the department isn't.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we're gonna have to let Jonathan go. So, Allison, are we ending the show, or are we gonna keep going after he's gone? What's the plan, Madam?
Oh, I think we can end the show. We could always. Do you have any final words, Jonathan, before we let you go?
Oh, well, I just want to say thank you guys so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I love it every time I come out, every time I get on the show.
You're welcome to come out as well, if you wish. You're not going to get any
that'd be great. I would just just saying I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and can't wait to do it again sometime.
Well, it's great having you, and good luck with your database of people.
Yeah. All right.
Sounds good.
We should have you back pretty soon. Yeah,
all right. Later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All right, Brian.
What?
Unless there are some final thoughts, anybody else has any final thoughts? I think we're good. We could.
Can I show my thing? I do have.
Oh yes! Oh yes! You remembered! Oh my God! You remembered!
Just gonna say, don't forget.
Okay.
Oh,
Mike,
do you want?
Tell us
do you
about
want
the
to shill
thing.
at the very end, or do you want to shill after I shill?
I can. I don't know. I suppose it makes sense to do it after Justin did his thing, and then Jonathan did.
We should
Okay,
leave
all
the
right.
most dramatic
Okay.
shill for last.
I don't. It's
Yeah,
not
put
going to
the
be
link
dramatic.
to the
shill.
petition in the chat there for you. I've got a petition to shill, folks. Daniel Stratton and I have redrafted the last one. Sort of got battered away by the government in bizarre circumstances. Well, in bizarre excuses. So we reworded it, and we're having another go. And obviously, we can't get anywhere until we get the signatures we need. So if you read this petition and you agree with it, then be a darling and sign it. and we can end discrimination in this particular field of law.
Yeah, I'd like to show the dance. Let me go get the.
Well, yeah, and as you showed the dance, I mean, I have I actually was inspired through this whole process of purchasing the Badger Cave, and just trying to figure out, just trying to think and feel what beyond the practical reasons that have been outlined multiple times, what this space really said to me. And so I developed the idea, and I mentioned this on the stream that I did with you, Mike, and Karen, Brian, on the Badger Cave, but this idea of a brain trust. So the idea of creating a helpline for men that's not a helpline, it's a do-it-yourself. So it would have people who are not just experts in mental health and giving men the tools to improve their mental health, but also experts in other things like cameras, video cameras, animation, art, even car repair. But so that men could actually work as they work on their mental health, they can also work on projects, and do positive things to improve their skills, improve their lives as they develop something. And this came out of the conversations that we've been having with Tom Golden and how men process their grief, and men tend to process their grief in an exterior way. In terms of, so he would give them a project to help them visualize and go through their grief. And I was thinking, well, why don't we extend that as a more masculine way of approaching mental health, as more of a do-it-yourself project in the context of a helpline that helps out with other things, pursuing other talents, pursuing other projects, pursuing other skill sets. So that was what my idea was. And if you have any comments on that, you can leave them in the comment section below. So we help men with their mental health as we develop the skill set of the community and expand the community, and everything grows in a positive direction. And if you like that idea, if you don't like that idea, if you have comments, the idea was also to have like volunteers to take a time slot during the week who have particular skill sets that might be of interest to people or to men, and not just mental health people who are good with mental health, but people who have all kinds of other skill sets. So I'll throw that out to the panel who are talking, or not talking, who are lurking, what they think of that, and if they understand what I'm saying, because I know that I can be very difficult to understand at times. So
I like
silence.
I am for the idea of a brain trust, and that I really have much else to add to that. I think someone making noise like they're ready to. We may lose Hannah because there's a storm, so I don't know.
Well, my floor is sort of creaky, so that might be the noise that you're hearing.
Oh, okay.
We may have lost Hannah, because I'm surprised she didn't want to jump in on that.
She's unmuted.
No, it's just it's taking me forever to unmute. Now I don't know if it's weather related or not. I just know the power blipped out like completely for a second. But I have a thing. But no, I think the more that we're able to sort of network and keep track of who can do what and who can be sort of called on to help with things and what people are willing to offer and able to offer and things like that, the more we can do things like that, the better, because we're going to need them. We're going to eventually get to the point where we'll have the numbers we need to actually start lobbying or start setting up supports for people who are in crisis and things like that. But we won't be able to do it if we don't know what people are able to offer and what people are able to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So
okay, I think we're good. Did you put the thing up?
Oh, it's up.
Someone requested it.
No, yeah, people are looking at it. It's up. It's playing. It's adorable.
Is it? Oh, I can't even see it. Or just let me see.
You can watch it later.
Oh yeah, that's true. I could watch it later.
All right.
If I watched YouTube.
If you watched our videos, yes.
No, I do sometimes. Okay.
Well,
I think
it is adorable.
I think that we've made this as awkward as humanly possible.
At the end, once all the smart people left. Yeah.
Yeah. Once all the smart people, you're just left with the drags here, except for Mike. He's not the drags.
Happy lurking, folks. Happy lurking.
Okay, and do you want me to say the shills? Oh, did
Do
you
you
stop
have more
streaming?
shills? No.
Oh yeah,
About
no,
to.
we're still doing the Feed the Badger because we're gonna try to do like screenings in Edmonton and in Saskatchewan, in my hometown, screenings of the Red Pill.
Do it.
So if you're interested in doing that and taking part in that, go to Feed the Badger and help us out, and also send stuff Karen's way or my way or whatever way, but do it
All right.
whatever way.
Taking us out.